discussion. This is going to take 40 minutes. And today with us, we have Michal Brichta from Slovak Space Office, Mike Kaplan from LeoStella, Angelina Bekasova from Latvian Space Industry Association, Hassan Abo Seda from Egyptian Space Agency, Pascal Barbier from Air Liquide Advanced Technologies, Brent Burby from NASA, Vasu Dubey from ISRO, and Nick Postra from CGI. So thank you once again, everybody, panelists, for joining today. We greatly appreciate your time. So, okay, so now moving on into the question. So the first question that we have for this panel today is, what role do you see private industry playing in shaping the future of space exploration, and how can government entities effectively partner with these private companies to achieve shared goals? And whoever would like to take this.
If I might start, Nick Postra here from CGI. In my view, government parties, such as also including ESA and NASA, should act more as a sort of anchor customers to private parties. So meaning that governmental parties should, in my view at least, should set out the lines and basically ensuring that private parties have an initial customer. And then afterwards, these projects that the private parties do, they should be allowed to sell their service or to other parties as well. So basically help enable them, and then afterwards they can go on their own endeavors.
All right. Anybody would like to continue on this? Yeah.
Yeah, if I may to compliment, and first of all, thank you for inviting me to this very diverse and interesting panel. Looking forward to being part of it. So, well, I would underline exactly what Nick said, and on top of it, also the factor of increasing commercialization of space, it creates new motivations for new entrants to the sector, and new stakeholders that are getting interested in space. And this is now also becoming an interesting area for, let's say, smaller countries, like, for example, Slovakia is the case. Smaller countries and countries which are relatively newer to the comprehensive space ecosystem development and space economy development. And in such cases, it also proved to be useful that the government is not only the customer. Obviously, when we talk about upstream space segment, the customer from the public area, it's still very important. But at the same time, it seems to be quite important to be the supporter of the ecosystem creation and the ecosystem development. So there are many ways how actually the government can help, let's say, the new companies, the startups, and the SMEs entering the field. Make it easier for them to achieve so, and help them to find their way towards the sector, and to create, for example, the necessary partnerships to acquire the necessary first experience. And yes, of course, here it's also quite often about investments, but it's also about the soft support which is surrounding it. So, for example, in our case, we see that the effect of financial support is multiplied if we also involve the non-financial tools to make the investment even more efficient, the investment to the company. So I would say that it's both the customer, but also the ecosystem supporter.
I'd like to pile on here. I think it's pretty well known that SpaceX probably wouldn't be around today if it wasn't for NASA providing what essentially was an anchor tenant customer relationship with the commercial cargo program for supplying International Space Station with supplies. I know Elon likes to tell the story that they were, like, I think within a week of declaring bankruptcy and folding up before a check from NASA arrived that kept them afloat. So there's a very good example of the government playing an anchor tenancy relationship. There's something else really interesting going on in the US, and there's this symbiotic relationship between the Space Development Agency within the DoD and commercial space companies. When SDA got started, their whole paradigm was to create a new architecture of proliferated LEO assets in several different layers or tranches, basically performing different apps. So initially they started off with the intent of wanting to leverage commercial capabilities. That's great. If you're a commercial satellite builder, whether established or emerging, it's a huge market. But what ended up happening was the requirements that they laid out challenged everyone to provide larger satellites with larger payload swap, size, weight, and power, for those of you that don't speak satellite lingo that are watching this. And so it caused commercial companies to increase the size of their satellites and capability. And what we're seeing now is there's new commercial opportunities that are emerging purely in the commercial space that are leveraging these new, more capable satellites that were created essentially to meet SDA needs. And and then I imagine this process is going to go on and on. So there's a very tight and synergistic relationship between the government and industry. I think it's very healthy.
Let me add something too, because really the question is indeed very interesting and we all have something to say about this here. Our companies say, please just don't disturb us. That's what they're telling our ministries. So indeed, and as the new space is growing, also the model of cooperation between the private and public sector is changing. I'm also representing the public sector. So very often what we can see, the public sector kind of duplicates the actions of the private sector. For example, we try to communicate or to help export the companies, but I think it's very important to also map the resources and skills, what the governmental sector can do, what the private sector cannot do. In my opinion, the private sector should not run after their colleagues and other companies to map the whole space industry, to think how we can cooperate. But as for the government, in my interest that several, for example, Latvian companies come together and cooperate. So again, this is not the task of a private entity, but this is something what the governmental sector can do. Here, look, here are several actors. We can do this and that together. I have the resource to help you to do that. At the same time, it's super important for us ministries that the private sector really comes to the governmental sector and suggests their interests and suggests what they would like to do and which help they need, because otherwise we're just guessing about each other's interests, and we need the synergies indeed, as Mike mentioned. And indeed, let's support this really new cooperation model also vis-a-vis private and governmental sector.
I can add something on what you said, Angelina. I fully agree. But first of all, thanks a lot to welcoming me for this panel. Honestly, this question is really interesting, and I would say that one of the roles also of the government and the space agencies is, as you mentioned, Angelina, is to look at the competencies of the nation, competencies of the local industry, and to look also at terrestrial companies, meaning the companies that are currently addressing terrestrial markets, to look at the technologies that could be adapted for space. Because if we look at space exploration, moon ambition, and so on, we won't be able to go on the moon and to stay on the moon if we are reinventing the wheel for all the technologies. So we need to rely on a solid, a really tough terrestrial market and companies that are already addressing that market, and to see how we can adapt those technologies to the space. And I think that's the role, one of the role of the governments and the space agencies to be fully aware of the competencies inside their country, and then to support those companies to be able to address the space market, because we all know that the space market is really a tough market with a lot of competition, a really long lead time, very risky. So we need to support also these companies in that endeavor.
All right, so while we're still on a topic, so kind of building onto that question still, so, and I was speaking about increased number of private space companies competing for space exploration contracts. So how do you see the competition playing out, and what impact will this have on the overall industry?
Well, I'll offer a few thoughts on that to start with. And first of all, thanks for having me on your panel today. I think the main comment I want to make on that topic to open things up is just to stress the importance of the competitive model, because it's almost impossible to sort of presuppose the outcome or decide simply by analysis which solution or which team is going to provide the best performance. And really, it all has to come down to performance. And the only way to find out is to have a competition that's authentic. And that's how you find out where the real results are. So I've seen time and time again that when the competitive model is used, whether it's for research proposals or for solutions that industry is trying to offer, and whether the competition is organized, with by government with a prize to be won, or whether it's open competition in the market, that competitive mechanism is very reliable for naturally selecting durable solutions. So I encourage its use.
As indeed Brent's saying, I fully agree. Thanks, Brent. And next to that, not only do you find through the competitive model, you'll not only find the most endurable model, but it will also increase the whole pace. So previously, like looking back to the traditional space, from idea to satellite into space, that could sometimes take 10, 20 years. We're now already seeing, especially also with the smalls and the microsat market, that this can be done in a couple of months. And that's also mostly due to the competitive nature of the various companies, such as ISOSpace here in the Netherlands. And traditionally, the competitive nature always has increased the pace, and I think that's only good. So that we finally have missions that from idea we can launch in maybe a month or so. So I think that will only benefit.
Some thoughts to add on this. Talking about competition, let's think not about the space sector. Let's think about events when people can network. You put 300 people in one room, and it's not that everyone is going to communicate with each other. We are going to see new groups formed, so the usual suspects. And I think the representatives of smaller member states will see the pain that after some time, this competition will be forming different groups. And it's quite hard to also, through your competition, to get into them or to create your own competitive group. And talking, for example, in Latvia, for example, to talk too good about yourself is considered just rude. This is not part of our culture. But right now, as you can see, really many companies, and the competition is very much defined through PR activities, through communication, and many ideas, they do not have that much technological behind as what is communicated. So in this competition, which is very communication based right now, it's really hard for introverted scientists to also compete, even though they have something really valuable to offer. But to really break this prejudice and usual suspects, that is a problem. This is not a problem of the competition, but it's something that we really have to address to increase the quality of this competition. That's my opinion here.
That's really an excellent point, Angelina. I think, one of the ways to solve that, in an earlier life, I was in the government at NASA headquarters, and one of the things that we often practiced is, you've got to be a smart customer. So when you're a smart customer, you've got to clearly define what it is you're buying. You've got to clearly define the evaluation criteria. And as you just pointed out, Angelina, you need to get the best solution, you need to coax solutions out and to get providers that otherwise might not be putting proposals on the table. So it's really, it's not just up to, competitors to go off and be aggressive with pricing and schedules. It's really, there's a large onus on the customer to be a smart customer. And one other point I want to make about that, it's really important, as we see, a lot of customers are focused, especially when they're buying satellites, or satellite constellations, for example, is they're focused on price and schedule. And what we're seeing is a lot of companies are struggling with delivery because of supply chain problems. Or we're seeing companies that deliver satellites that don't last. And it's largely because the customer didn't realize that mission assurance, reliability was an important criteria that they really didn't factor in their decision making. So, it all gets back to, you got to be a smart customer. And as suppliers, sometimes that's up to us to help educate them.
Yeah, also definitely agree that Mike, and need to add to that. Also to add to Angelina, here in the Netherlands, as we are also quite a small country, we noticed that we should not compete on a company level, but more on a sort of national level, in which here in the Netherlands we created SpaceNet, which is the branch organization for all space companies here in the Netherlands. And also, for example, to conferences like the ISC, we stand with a Dutch pavilion there, just to show out that we are basically one out there, and we have friends all over. We consider all the other companies here in the Netherlands as friends, and we work together and try to set up mutual work relationships with other companies outside of the Netherlands. So that's probably also something for you in Latvia, Angelina, a possibility to cooperate with all the other companies that are out there.
So let me ask you all a question as behalf of attendee. Now I'm just an attendee, and I'm speaking with most of the leading company representatives, agency representatives, and leading people in this industry. So as an attendee, I would like to know, how can space exploration be used to address some of the world's most pressing challenges, such as climate change, resource scarcity, and geopolitical conflict?
If I can just start for this answer. Honestly, I think we all know that the space environment is the harshest environment that we can meet, and that's a very good playground to test technologies that could one day be used on Earth to save energy, to do plenty of things that will contribute to reducing the climate change. And so in that ambition, we really need to keep this focus on space, to improve our existing technologies with regard to efficiency, with regard to mass. And so space is a really good playground. And if I can just take 2 minutes to share an example of Air Liquide, for instance, we developed in the past a cooler which is called Melfi, which is running on the ISS. And so this cooler is really a specific one based on a turbo Brayton cycle. And based on this development, we adapted this product to the ground. And now on Earth, it is used to reduce the boil off from liquid methane that is carried by tankers. And so it reduces also all the gases that could be released in the atmosphere. So this is a clear link between a space development and the adaptation of a space development to terrestrial need in order to reduce the climate change. So I think this is really interesting to look at space, because this is the best environment on which we can test technology and improve our knowledge on that specific topics.
I think some of the onus of getting a greater understanding of the public on the, I guess, in a sense, the question is really there's a huge value, and it goes beyond exploration of the space industry. And I think a lot of people don't really appreciate this. I think there's a belief that we're taking money and we're putting it in a rocket and we're launching we're launching money into space, like we're throwing it away. And there's just a general misconception of how much our lives even today revolve around space. I was talking to someone the other day and I said, well, I don't know what we need, space for navigation. I've got my phone. I mean, that's my phone lets me navigate. The fact that there's GPS satellites or GLONASS or Baidu or Galileo, whichever flavor of GPS satellites you're using, escapes most people. So there's this, I think some of it is our responsibility of people that work in this industry, whether it's customers and suppliers, to communicate that there's a clear link between quality of life on Earth and the technologies that we're all trying to advance to put into space.
I think that's a great point, Mike. And to that, I'll add that another misconception that people often have is that they think that there's a lot more money being spent to provide all of those services than actually is being spent. So, the total amount of money that's spent on space activities is actually a very tiny fraction of, overall national budgets and overall, annual consumer spending in almost every other sector. You can pick almost any sector of the economy here in the U.S. and look at annual consumer spending in that sector, and it dwarfs NASA's budget by at least a factor of several, often more than that. So, but if you ask somebody on the street, they'll tell you that they think that NASA's budget is like 40% of the nation's budget, which is like, a factor of 80 over the truth. So, so there's some public education about the economic aspects of space serves to underscore the point that you made.
I think
sorry.
Please go on, Angelina.
Oh, you were the first one.
No, please.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to mention Pascal actually touched the soft spot. I really love everything about space, but my favorite thing is technology transfer to Earth and also the downstream sector, because indeed a lot is going on, but we could potentially still continue living on Earth. And my discourse about promoting space is usually mentioning that space can also support radical innovation for the life quality on Earth. Think about life support systems and medicine on Earth. We still have so many problems to solve for our health, but we could do it much faster using the huge funds the space sector is right now offering us right now and right here. And another thing, we should really try as the whole space community to be less isolated. I know we're cool, we're like a team of cool space people, but very often other people do not realize that we really need them. I still cannot understand why we so rarely refer to Earth observation data or navigation data as digitalization tools. In the European Union, digitalization is a very huge buzzword. For digitalization, we have huge funds available, but not everyone will automatically think that using this freely available EO data, for example, is a very powerful digitalization tool. And you cannot expect people to automatically think about this. So maybe to bring space closer to people, to benefits on Earth, we have to think how we can expand our community by using the understandable words and mapping the buzzwords, the Earth buzzwords, because, well, why are we doing this? For our life here, with the quality here on Earth. So yes, technology transfer, downstream, very nice.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. So yeah, I let Angelina speak first because I wanted to take inspiration from her words. No, but really, what I think there are two points that we also try to focus on in our work. Again, as a public institution, we are, among other things, also responsible for the outreach activities and for communicating space and its importance and everything that revolves around that. And the two things are, so the first one is to help understand that investment is not a spending, it's an investment. It's an investment that has its returns, it has its economic return, it has a social, environmental return, etc. Solely the economic return is let's say in magnitude of 3 to 4 to even 6 at times the investment size. There are many studies on this topic, and of course the results vary, but it's usually around this 3 to even 6 multiplier from the invested amount. And the second point is that space is, of course, obviously becoming more and more commercially centered and economic centered. So usually what people understand, what the public understands by space, it's closer to purely the exploration part. But along with the exploration, it's becoming more and more practically focused. And today, I would say that the space, of course, it has incredible specifics, and it's a sector like no other. But actually, it's sector like every other. It's simply a new economy which creates new possibilities for the companies. It creates new added value for the people. It creates new added value for terrestrial sectors, and this is also something that it's very rarely understood by the public. So the two facts that it's an investment, and it's an investment to an technology sector which is basically powering the knowledge economy of the 21st century.
So I have a,
Oh, sorry, go. Sorry.
no, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Nick, if you have it.
Yeah, just one other small point I would like to make, because I fully agree with basically everything that has been said so far. But it can also we have mainly been speaking about economics in this past few minutes, but also but currently a lot is when we send also astronauts up into space, it's also considered a lot of the times a waste of money, but a lot of astronauts actually come back to Earth with the so-called astronaut effect, in which they have seen this blue pale dot in the large emptiness of space, and they come back with as basically as an environmental advocate everywhere on schools and etc. Promoting the safe use of our planet, and also. And next to that, I think also speaking on the geopolitical conflicts, I think currently the ISS is the only place where the US and Russia are still cooperating. So I think also if we can have that state of mind, the so-called ISS state of mind spread over the world, it can only be beneficial.
I like that. I like that, Nick.
Nick, I love your idea. Sorry, Martinez, just to say that, Nick, I love your point. And honestly, space exploration, this is not a matter of nation. This is a matter of humanity, and we really need to foster the collaboration between nations. Really good point.
Yeah. So a question here for Brent Berby. As we talked about the challenges, especially when it comes to resource scarcity, and obviously you're one of the key team members with the DART mission. And now building onto the question, so how the insights acquired from the DART mission helps us in terms of planning and future of exploratory and mining missions?
That's an interesting question. So there are, I would say, several ways in which outcomes from the DART mission could be relevant to mining and resource utilization potentially. One of the perhaps I wouldn't say, maybe obvious isn't the right word, but the more immediate ways is that the Didymos binary asteroid system, particularly the main body Didymos, and to some extent Dimorphos, the secondary body, we've gathered a lot of physical characterization data, a lot of which was remote, a little bit of which was in situ by virtue of the terminal images collected by DART, and also the flyby images collected by LICIACube, which was built by the Italian Space Agency. And so those images combined with other imaging remotely by Hubble Space Telescope and other Earth-based telescopes, particularly where there was the spectroscopy done, has helped us better understand the composition of the asteroid, and that can be linked back to factors that are relevant for mining in terms of mineral content, the extent to which minerals are hydrated, because water is an important resource, And so all those remote characterization techniques that were exercised and improved upon during the DART mission would certainly be relevant for characterizing other asteroids that might be potential mining targets. And then one of the unique things provided by DART was the terminal imagery of Dimorphos. And I'll point out that the European Space Agency is launching the Hera mission, which will rendezvous with the Didymos system in 2026 and provide a wealth of data about both Didymos and Dimorphos. But in the meantime, just the terminal imagery, which shows the surface of Dimorphos and the size frequency distribution of boulders and other rocky constituents on the surface, provides a lot of useful data that people who are trying to plan mining missions might be able to use, because they might be able to estimate the extent to which that sort of regolith could support anchoring for equipment that might be used to process material and things like that. And then finally, the response of DART to the kinetic, or the Dimorphos to DART's kinetic impact, tells us something about how much ejecta can be produced by those sorts of impacts. And we can link that back eventually to the strength of the asteroid and the strength of the constituent materials. And those are all important things to know if you want to try to mine material off the asteroid and process it. So those are some ways I would say that DART's results might be relevant to resource utilization.
Thank you, Brent.
I wanted to follow up on that a little bit, because that's really, it's really key to be able to correlate, I guess, in situ or near in situ observations with remote observations, to be able to figure out, I guess, what targets would be more promising than other targets. But there's another piece to the puzzle. There are several pieces to this one. One of the other pieces to the puzzle is to stimulate the commercial development of deep space small satellites. You can't just, there are many customers that talk to me about, hey, you guys build the Black Sky satellites and loft orbital satellites. I'd like to build a satellite like that and orbit the moon, or go to a higher altitude, or whatever. And it's the differences in technology and because of the differences in operating environments are substantial. And I think this is an example with, for example, with NASA and the international partners that are going back to the moon for the Artemis program. I'm hoping that'll create stimulus. For example, we believe eventually we're going to need some sort of, lunar GPS and communications relay infrastructure. That would very likely require some government stimulus. And I believe once that occurs, the private sector will then be able to take those investments and then to be able to produce low cost, small satellites. And when I talk small satellites, I'm talking about satellites, 200 to 500 kilograms in mass. Satellites that are, DART sized roughly, that could deliver, initial mineral exploration packages to asteroids. So there's a role here, and it gets back to one of the first themes we talked about earlier. There's a role here for the government to play a stimulating effect to help create the financial environment where companies don't have to take huge risks to lay out a lot of money to develop new space platforms.
Perfect. So closing onto the session. So the question here for all of you. So what lessons can be learned from the past collaborations between governments and private space companies in terms of space exploration, and how can these lessons be applied to the future collaborations to ensure their success? And before you start answering that question, I want to encourage everybody who's either watching this live or after recording, so you can find the link which is included, to go and network and to collaborate with the speakers that you have been watching through today's sessions, because we believe collaboration is the key. That's why we're organizing this event, and that's what we're meeting all here for today. But now we're moving on with the question. What would be your thoughts?
Can I start for this point? Hello?
Yeah.
I think one of the lessons learned maybe we must build innovation ecosystem that can supported by all stakeholders, This can make many benefits. Each stakeholder will play their role. There will be no conflict, so government and private sectors and economic parties can participate in enhance or more progress in space economy, and can achieve sustainable development and sustainability for space. Private sector has strong point, like it is has more flexibility, can do more risk, don't follow bureaucratic rules. Government can make policy, can start invest in capacity building. So I think this innovation ecosystem nationally or globally will be very useful in space industry. Thank you.
I'd like to share on my not main lesson, but a very valuable one. We really, like the public sector and the governmental sector, should finally start learning each other's language. If the private sector wants the public official to support the private sector, we need this vocabulary to be able to speak on their behalf. And to be honest, my hobby is to really HR scientists and make them explain what do you do, because for me it's still the biggest mystery how a calculator can count whatever I want. So with this knowledge, please explain to me what you do, and you will not leave until you understand, because I need to support you, but I cannot look foolish if I cannot do this. And at the same time, the governmental sector should put also some extra effort to learn STEM, to know what we have to support, because previously IT computers were also a crazy thing, and right now we allow all semi-IT professionals. So we should start doing this in space, in STEM, and after all, it's exciting. So the future will anyway be connected to it, so it's the right time to do it.
To add to that, need government parties and private parties should need always try to work together, as we need. I think Mike said it earlier in this panel. What we can learn from the SpaceX that they were on the brink of bankruptcy, and that they got basically rescued by NASA, and now look at where they are, and also that cooperation that's make sure that rockets were developed and launched in record times. I think it only took 2 years for Falcon 9 for the first launch. But as long as the private companies are given the degree of freedom they are used to, so as governments are typically used to work on some sort of waterfall method, which with predetermined requirements, and that can take a very long time. But if you are able to with all parties to speed that up and maybe be less focused on these requirements, but still, of course, ensuring the safety of all missions, and we can speed up and work together, brilliantly in the future.
Well,
probably if I should take
sorry, go on.
one lesson learned from our case. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. So if I should take one lesson that we learned, it would be probably this one. So we try to apply this rule now all the time, and if a government wants to help a company, it should try to think like one. And so how the companies work, they are identifying, let's say, a gap in the market or sort of a challenge, and they're trying to find a most efficient way to solve it. And this is exactly what we applied some time ago when first working with the space ecosystem, identifying identifying, let's say, the challenges the ecosystem is facing, and it helped us to build our activities from the governmental side, and it worked. It seems simple, but sometimes it can be challenging for government and for governmental officials to really operate in a mindset of the companies. But in my view, it's the most efficient way how to get close to what the companies really need, not what the government official think the companies need.
All right. Well, I hope the message was heard by both sides, by the private or the government players out there. So definitely, I mean, this is a pressing topic these days as we see more and more private companies are being involved in the industry, and obviously how now both players from the government and private side work collaboratively for the initiatives as we described there today for the human effort, right, for people. Because at the end of the day, we're here to serve the humanity, to serve the planet, and face and solve these pressing challenges that we have today. So I hope, again, for attendees, even if you're watching this live or after a recording, as I mentioned, you're going to have the panel speaker list where you can contact with them privately for those collaborative initiatives or any other ideas, questions, or just to connect for whatever other business or other reason. And for the panel speakers, I greatly appreciate all of your time, all of your inputs, and it definitely thought-provoked some of those ideas that you put out today. So I greatly appreciate your time. Thank you again.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.